Thanks for ignoring my calls, by the way.
I haven't been ignoring your calls. I've been busy.
Yeah, busy ignoring me.
Ding 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 ding.
No, Jay, don't.
What?
Don't answer it.
No.
I want kangaroo stuff.
Daniel.
I need consoling.
I'll call you back, yeah.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Bye, Daniel. Bye.
Oh, all right.
I'm consoling you.
Okay, retro go. Let's go.
Hello and welcome. Welcome and hello. This is Wait, You Haven't Seen? It's a show where we talk about movies and specifically talk about a movie at least one of us has never seen before. I'm your host, Travis, aka TV's Travis. This is episode number 310, and our movie this week is 2022's Talk to Me. And here to talk with me about it, from the Opinionated Lushes, it's Jessica Hart. Jessica, how you doing?
Hi, I'm good. I'm so happy to be here. I have my notes.
Excellent.
And yeah.
All right, so Talk to Me from 2022. What did you know about this, or had you heard of it and just not gotten around to it? What's the history there?
Okay, I did see the trailers. I think possibly online, like YouTube or something.
Okay.
And I do love horror movies. It is like my genre.
Okay.
But again, we were talking about this prior to the show, but like I have not been watching movies lately. And again, this one was available on Netflix and I saw it was there and I was like, "Oh yeah, maybe next Saturday." And then Saturday passes and it's never next Saturday, you know?
Yeah. Just constantly kick it down the road, and eventually I'll get there, and then you forget about it, and something else comes along that you don't watch either, and it just
And then
feeds
eventually
itself.
I'm on a podcast and then I got to watch it. So
Yeah.
it worked out.
So I remember seeing a trailer for this, and I thought, I'm intrigued, and I went and saw this in the theater. It came out, so it was made in 2022, did some festivals, got picked up by A24, and got released in the States in 2023. So I went and saw it, and I immediately was kind of blown away by the movie when I saw it that first time. So then I was waiting for it to hit streaming, coming to be able to watch it again at home. And what I'm curious about, so first time watching it as a horror movie fan, what did you think?
I personally loved it. It had like just the right amount of gore, just the right amount of jump scares, just the right amount of suspense with a few, funny moments trickled in. There was like sometimes I could kind of guess what was going to happen, but
Mhm.
it still made it fun. If
Yeah.
that makes sense in a horror movie, like fun scared. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Excellent. So this was actually directed by a couple of YouTube people. They got their start on YouTube. Brothers from Australia. So this is a very Australian film, to the point where one of the trivia bits was that they were offered money to remake this with a bigger budget, but it would have had to have moved production to the U.S. and they didn't want to do that. Now I don't know if that's true or not, but their thing was they wanted to keep things in Australia and do the VFX work with Australian houses and that kind of stuff. And
Well, like
I
I
like
don't
that.
like what would more of a budget have done for this movie?
I don't know,
Like,
honestly.
the effects were so good. Like, I don't feel like a bigger budget would have helped, and personally, while watching this, I thought it was British until the kangaroo, and then I was like, "Oh, it's that kind of accent, got you."
And
Was my mistake.
yeah, it's if you don't hear accents a lot, that can definitely happen.
Yeah.
So it's Danny and Michael Philippou. Probably mispronouncing that, but we're going with Philippou. So brothers, they got their start on YouTube. I think Raka Raka, I believe, is what their channel was called. And they were doing all sorts of stuff on there. They did some I saw where they were like camera department on the Babadook, kind of work experience stuff early on. But this was their first feature film. So hell of a
Cool.
debut.
Yeah. Like, I'm scared to see what's next because, like, it might be, like, feel like a letdown.
Right, it's that a little bit of that M. Night Shyamalan kind of effect, right? His debut feature film is Sixth Sense, and it's such a hit and such a massive cultural phenomenon that now he spends his entire career trying to live up to that, and it's an impossible bar to clear, right?
Yeah, the last ones have not hit, I'll be honest. So, M. Night Shyamalan,
It
start writing.
I think, I mean, for me, a big part of his issue was the trying to make everything into a twist,
Mhm.
and that is tough to do. Like, it's hard to pull off a good twist once. When you try to make it your thing, it's really tough to hold that line. Now, these brothers do have a new film out, I believe, this year. I think it's in a couple of months, called Bring Her Back, which I just saw a trailer for. Looks interesting. So I'm very curious about that. And there's already talk of a sequel to this movie in pre-production. We'll get there on what I think about that. But for this movie, so they start off and you just get it's interesting the way this movie is kind of structured, because we get like a party scene, but not
Mhm.
for a few minutes in. We sort of have to meet our main character first, Sophie Wilde, and I kind of like that they don't over hold your hand. Everything is kind of told visually, like you can figure out that it's a funeral or a remembrance or a wake of some kind, just based on everybody's body language.
Which I think is great. Like, when you're writing a screenplay, you should not put everything in the dialogue. You should actually put as little in the dialogue as possible. Like, everything should be visual. You have this great multimedia, use it. I feel like that's when you can tell something probably meant to be a novel versus a
Yeah, and
screenplay.
in fact, they said one of those things in an interview. They said when they were writing the script, there's things you have to kind of spell out and make sense for your characters and all of that. But then when you're translating that and you're actually shooting it, you can turn those into visuals. So I
Mhm.
love those visuals to start off, because here's Mia looking all, sad and all of that, and then we have her talking to somebody, and then you come back to like a medium or a wide shot, and everybody's sitting around, nobody's really talking, and everybody's wearing black. You immediately you can figure out what's going on. They're at a funeral for somebody, or in this case we find out it's actually like a remembrance day.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's a normal thing or not that goes on, like, or yeah, it's got to be something that I guess is probably pretty typical. But 2 years after her mom died.
2 years after, like, a mom passing, a younger mother passing,
Hmm.
so maybe it's, like, more for the family.
Yeah, but I love the way like that was started off, and then I love our introduction to her dad, because like the way that whole scene is framed and brought about, where she's washing dishes afterwards, and he comes in to talk to her, and they keep him out of focus, and the audio where she's got to turn the tap off so she can hear him, and it's still barely audible, and like
Mhm.
just that disconnect between the two of them told through that, I love like that kind of stuff is just great visual multimedia storytelling.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
But then we're introduced to her friend Jade, and his little brother Riley. Our introduction to Riley and his buddy, Jake, is it James? I can't. It's J name.
Um, which buddy?
The one where Riley and him are sitting there, and he pulls out the pack of cigarettes at
Oh,
one
yeah,
point.
yeah, I don't even remember his name. I just remembered him as Riley's friend.
Riley's friend with the mullet.
Yeah, the bad influence.
Yeah. Um, and he calls for a ride, and like Jade doesn't pick him up. Mia shows up and taking Riley home. And here's our first kind of really cool symbolic moment where they come upon the kangaroo. So now you know that the movie is taking place in Australia, which is good.
Yeah, this was the moment.
But it's a pretty cool scene, because first they're singing in the car. Who hasn't done that, right? Like, you always want to make your characters relatable. So give them something, and it's two goofballs belting out, and Chandelier too. What a great song to choose for belting in the car, because That
No one can sing it good.
no one can.
No one can.
But I love the way that scene unfolds as they're doing that, and when it takes her attention away to whatever she sees in the road. He keeps singing, but she stops him, but then the music is still going for a minute before she finally shuts it off. Like the shock of it takes her a second to fully process. And the fact that we don't see immediately what it is she's seeing, I liked. You know, she's got to get out of the car and look at it, and then it's a kangaroo that's been hit and it's dying. And she can't even bring herself to do the merciful thing and put it out of its misery. And she also doesn't call anyone. I don't understand why she didn't want to call anyone, but it's just this idea that like she can't do that.
She can't handle things.
Yeah.
Like even later on in like the scenes that come up, like any stressful situation, she shuts down.
Mm-hmm. Which
She doesn't help or do any, like it's just she just shuts.
and that does feel realistic. There are absolutely situations and people that will hit those situations that will just shut down. So I really liked that as a character. She didn't go hysterical. She just kind of went numb.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get her getting Riley home, and we get introduced to Riley and Jade's mom, played by Miranda Otto, who I love Miranda Otto.
She was great. Like
And
as
she
a
was
mom of a
fantastic.
teenager, I was like so relatable.
I was
Like,
gonna-
I would do the same thing. You
I was
sneaking
going to
out?
ask about that, like, because it felt like Sue as a character was a bit of a wild child and knew kind of all the things that her daughter would be doing. And so just assumed her daughter would do all of those. And all of her scenes were great. Because she was just she was the perfect level of sarcastic without feeling like a sitcom mom.
Yeah. I'll punch you in the face, help me God, or whatever it is that she says.
Yeah.
You better not drink tonight. I'll punch you in the face. It's like, yeah, no, I get it. I get it.
Also interesting that they don't there's no dad and no mention of one. Like it's not a plot point, and it's not a story point really of any kind.
There's one mention, and it's only when Riley's in the hospital and the mom gets a phone call. And then I think she goes like, "Oh, it's your father." And like that's it. So it's like he's probably not involved at all, you know, but that's not the main part of the story. That doesn't matter. It's not,
No, it doesn't.
you know, so it's just a thing that happens. Yeah.
Which I like. I love when movies can have situations like that where they don't have to draw attention to it. It's just this happens to be the way this life is for these people. So yeah, she apparently works late, probably works nights, something like that. So there's a little bit of that going on. Yeah. So the kid, what is it? So Mia and Jade are going to head out to a party. And Riley blackmails his way to go. So like Sue is just doesn't care, apparently, or cares, but knows she can't really stop them.
It's one of those things where it's better to know that your kids are going out than to have them sneak out and not know.
Yeah. That's
so
true.
It's like now she's probably waiting around to like see when they're coming home versus if she fell asleep earlier and then didn't find out until the morning and they weren't in their beds, you know. It's kind of one of those things like you can't stop them. They're going to figure out a way, so.
And I like Riley blackmailing his way in with like, I'll tell mom. And Jade's like, she already knows we're going. No, I'll tell her you didn't pick me up. All right, fine.
Yeah, the thing she doesn't know. No, He was very smart. That actor, Joe Bird.
Yes.
Yeah, he was great. Like he was born in 2007.
He was legitimately 14 or 15 years old when they made this movie.
Like it's crazy because like some of his scenes, like
they're intense.
They're very intense.
Yeah, I know. When I found out, like, because Sophie Wilde playing Mia, and I believe Alexander Jensen playing Jade, they're both kind of the early 20s playing 17, 18, which makes sense. That's pretty normal. Yeah. So I assumed that Joe Bird, when I was first watching this, I'm like, he's really young looking, but he's probably like 19. And then I see
Mhm.
afterwards, like, no, he's 15. Like, he is absolutely a child. Pretty impressive and really just a great performance. Like, everyone in this, I feel like, is really nailing the performances of these kids. They felt like teenagers. And I say that because they felt completely alien to me because I have reached old man status now. And
Fair,
so,
fair.
like, when I'm seeing them, I'm like, yeah, these kind of dipshit kids. And I realize, oh yeah, because I'm an adult apparently. So makes sense. Perfectly makes sense.
Yeah,
Because
I always have to remind myself that teenagers are invincible.
oh yeah,
Like, that's why they do such stupid stuff because they don't think they're gonna die.
yeah, and they don't know any better. Like, they just don't know what they don't know, so they can get away with a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and then they're getting peer pressured and they're like,
Hmm.
"Gosh, I have to be cool." And then
Yeah,
it's just a mess.
and they get to the party, and we're introduced to Haley and Joss. Haley does not want Mia there, and we don't get any backstory as to why. And again, I kind of don't care. I don't need that. I don't need to know why Haley doesn't like Mia. She just doesn't. Um, they're terrible though. Haley and Joss are just awful.
Yes.
Like, they're just really really terrible people. And a
Yeah.
lot peer pressure you brought up. There's a lot of that, which to me, this movie uses this hand as the focal point of the story, and it's very much a supernatural story, but it also is a lot of just teenage peer pressure, angst, drinking, drugs type storytelling,
Mhm.
just with the framing device of this hand. And I liked that because it felt like, that sort of that idea that, like, they enjoy playing around and messing around with this thing because of how it makes them feel. They don't understand how dangerous it really is. And it's sort
Yeah.
of, getting started maybe in taking some drugs or drinking to excess, especially like when you're young.
And it's like, yeah, some people do these things and walk away unscathed, but then every once in a while, some kid does it, or the the younger brothers or something, and then that's when it goes too far. We've had episodes of Degrassi made about this in the 90s,
Yep.
like, but they just found a different way to tell that story that's like interesting. I
Y-
just wanted to bring up Mia really quick because, like, yeah,
Yeah.
we don't get a whole lot of her, like, backstory character,
Mhm.
but throughout the movie, there is, like, lines where it's like, you can see, like, she constantly is pushing herself onto people,
Mhm.
and people are like, "Oh, she's so annoying," or how like, you brought yourself into my family," or
Oh,
"Why aren't you answering my calls?" And she's like, "I'm talking to my boyfriend." "Yeah, well, I dated him too." And so her whole character is literally just, like, over encompassing, like, other people, like, she's, like, trying and that's what they, like, don't people don't like that, so
they
it was, like,
don't.
interesting ways.
Yeah, and a lot of it is because you get a little bit of how close she was to her mom at one point, and then for that to be taken away from her, she doesn't have that connection anymore, and she's searching for some sort of connection with anyone and everyone to fill that void. So,
And her mom had issues.
mhm,
You don't hear about the whole thing, but even in the clips you see, it almost like, their relationship seemed weird because those clips would have been when she was, like, 13, 14 years old,
yeah, yep,
And so it's like some of those comments in the video, I was like, she wa the mom needed therapy, but
yeah,
that's yeah, that's what but she was the child, she didn't recognize that the relationship was somewhat inappropriate there too.
sure. And we don't get a lot of her relationship with her dad, but it's obviously strained since her mom died. And what I kind of liked about the way they did portray it is they don't go in either direction of, like, him being a real good supportive dad or him being a terrible deadbeat dad. He's just there, and she doesn't engage, and we don't really get a reasoning why. But I also kind of understand it, as she's a teenager who lost her mom, who lost the one she was connected with,
Mhm.
and at least some part of the back of her mind blames her dad for it. And him also doing the thing of protecting her by not telling her things, which always works, right? That's
Classic parenting move.
100% success rate when you do that. Listen, people, communication. Okay, communication. It's important.
It is. It is.
But I really liked the way they did it because he seems like a decent guy, just doesn't understand what to do and can't relate to her.
I feel like the cinematography especially was like from her point of view.
Mhm.
So like him like in the dark or him, it was very much like from her perspective and how she was maybe reading the situation.
Yes.
I'm sure if you changed it from his perspective, you would see it almost like him reaching out more, but just from her perspective, it just felt very, almost isolating, like he's just saying the things.
Yeah. Yep. And I like that. The whole movie is in her voice. It's her story being told. So then we get our introduction to the hand, right? This is the MacGuffin of the movie. What did you think of the kind of setup for that and then the effect of it happening and what they were doing with that?
Well, I loved in the beginning how they talk about it, like, yeah, it's a mummified hand, and then you always have the one kid that's like, that's not what mummies look like, and they're like, no, but wrapped in ceramic, and
Yeah.
they're like, oh, and asking questions. They're like, I don't know, do you want like the transaction history? And I was like, that's exactly how I would expect them to talk. Like, and they're not gonna have this whole movie's filled with unreliable narrators.
Yep.
So like they're not gonna have all the information either, and that doesn't even matter. That doesn't matter. It's just this is why this hand is here. And I did feel like the idea is really cool with like you're like shaking hands with the dead
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that you have to cordially invite them in.
Mm-hmm.
Like it felt very like polite.
It did. Yeah, I love the unreliable narrator idea because these kids wouldn't know this information. So they wouldn't have that to give out. But also, like, this is how you do ambiguity well. Because it's not just, oh, it's a thing, hand wave it away. It's like you can buy that they wouldn't know that because they wouldn't have asked. Like, 17-year-old, 18-year-old kids seeing some cool thing that they think is really cool and edgy, they're just gonna be like, yeah, I want a piece of that. Give me that. And, not ask the questions. So I like that. It also, harkens back to like Ouija board or, Bloody Mary or those kinds of party things that you used to do. It's just an updated
Light as a
version
feather,
of it.
stiff as a board.
Yes,
And all the
exactly.
witch stuff. Yep.
All the kooky stuff you do when you've had a
I was
few
a teen
beers.
girl once, okay?
One thing I always forget, and then I watch the movie, I've seen this a couple times now, is that it's a left hand, which I feel like is somewhat symbolic. Because traditionally, because we're so right hand dominant in just society in general, it's always shaking hands with your right hand. So the fact that this is a left hand, I was like, oh, I forget that. And it's kind of neat that goes about there. Plus, there's a whole sorts of things with like left hand being more demonic or evil or blah, blah, blah. Like a lot of that's propaganda.
Yeah.
But
Oh, yeah. My husband's a lefty,
Yeah.
so he's nicer than me. They do make, like, one throwaway line about how the other hand's out there somewhere too, so it
Yeah.
kind of, like, it gives me the little, like, "Huh, I wonder if the right hand lets you talk all the, like, healthy ghosts."
Maybe that's what it is. But yeah, I love like it's a little line like that, and the ambiguity of where it came from gives nice world building to this without having to do exposition. We don't need an exposition dump of where this came from and what it does and all of that.
Where it came from doesn't matter to the story,
Nope.
like, it's irrelevant, so what does it matter? We know what's here. We have a vague idea of what it does,
Hmm. And
enough to
even
tell a good story.
yeah, and even then, like all they know is that something happens and not to do it for more than 90 seconds. They're given like the ritual of how to go about it and that you don't do it for more than 90 seconds and that's it. And you got Haley and Joss who don't even explain that the guy they got it from stabbed his brother and killed himself because of whatever happened with this. Like, they don't tell their friends that. They just, it's this cool thing we're going to play around with, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a whole lot of dumb kids doing dumb things.
Yeah, doing dumb kid stuff.
Yep.
Like stopping it at trying to stop it at 83 seconds when you're not supposed to go over 90. I would be stopping that thing at 60 just in case. Like, what
Mhm.
if I miscounted? What if my clock is wrong? What if it was 90 seconds in some other time zone? I don't know. Like, I'm not taking that risk.
Yeah, and they don't give like, they're just like, you can't do it for more than 90 seconds. Why? Well, because you can't. And we don't know how bad it could get, but it can get really bad. I loved how the first time it happens, we see the ghost. And it's gross. Super gross
Yeah.
looking, and then there's the theme of like water going on throughout the rest of it. Cause the first ghost we see, she looks like she was drowned.
Mhm.
And after that, you hear burbling water a lot, and there's a lot of water imagery going on. And it feels like that was just a motif they were going for. But I love that first time, and then when they're under the influence of it, when they say "I let you in," the physical changes to the person involved in it. Which, I'm sorry, but if I'm at a party and I see somebody do that, number one, I'm probably swearing that I will never drink again, but also I'm leaving. If somebody's eyes turn black and they start
That's
getting,
your old man brain. That's your old man brain talking. That's
no,
why.
that was me in my teenage years as well. I don't mess with that.
A lot of the imagery is very like drug related, how your pupils can
Hmm.
change. Sometimes they'll turn into pinholes, sometimes they'll dilate fully, or like the blue lips, choking. Like these are all like, the spasms, all things,
Yeah,
being following other people, blurting things that you would like. These are all like things that can happen under the effect of drugs.
yeah,
So
yeah. And you could have done this movie ambiguous as to like, is there actually anything supernatural going on? But I kind of like that the movie really leans into, no, it is. There's some just
yeah.
weird stuff going on, but we're not going to like explain it either. And I've even seen a couple of interviews with the directors where they talked about like certain things that happened in the movie, the way the story was out, that they don't give any answers to why. And I appreciate that, because it doesn't matter why. It just did happen. And then it's open to interpretation from your audience as to why or how or any of that.
And that makes it scarier.
It really does.
Like horror movies that could happen to anyone,
Mhm.
like that they're just so random. Like that horror can just happen. You don't need the why. That makes it so much scarier.
I also found it funny that first time Haley and Joss tell her, so you take the hand and you say, "Talk to me," but it's not until after she sees something and freaks out, then they say, "No, now you say, I let you in."
I think they were just messing with her.
Oh,
Like they
absolutely.
knew, like, which is the greatest part because
You know,
like it's they're
they've already,
bullies.
they lit the joint and had her take a drag on it, and now it's like, no, 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 now you have to take another drag and inhale and hold it for a
Mhm.
second. Got to get a little deeper in there. And yeah, and then when she
Yeah.
gets possessed, and that's just, boy, that Sophie Wilde sold that scene so much. It was creepy.
Every possession in this movie, they committed.
Oh yeah.
Like there wasn't one possession that I was like, they're kind of faking it. It's like every I was like, oh my gosh.
And they were all different too.
Mhm.
That's the other thing, is like this first one with Sophie, she's very demonstrative and pointing at people, and it gets really creepy, and they're trying to pull the hand off of her. She won't let go of it. And I'm sorry, but Joss is a big dude. He would have gotten that hand out of her hand, right? She's very small.
Mhm.
But apparently has the grip of a gorilla. So but her like pointing at Riley at one point too, and really making him uncomfortable. And then you realize, oh, that's right. This is a 15-year-old. Like the character is. That's a terrible, terrible thing to do. And Haley doesn't care. Just doesn't. So they set up to do it again the next night, and that's where we get the some of my favorite Miranda Otto stuff, where she's going around the house trying to get when the party is happening out of everybody. It was great. When's the party again? I captured some audio of it.
She already told me. I just needed to know. Like,
Yeah.
when is it starting? No, you're good. You're good.
But they do it a second time, and then we get the montage of it, which I love the montage. I thought that was a lot of fun, seeing all of them doing it, because that is the kids just messing with a thing they don't fully understand, but they're having fun with it. And the idea that, because this whole idea of getting possessed and they know what's going on, they're aware of it all happening, but there's like a euphoric feeling to it. So they want more of that. They want more of that feeling. That's again, that kind of drugs allegory to it, where it's making them feel good. So they just want to keep going, want to keep doing it.
And the montage was one of those moments that really like relieved the tension, because you think, like, I thought something bad was going to happen with the first possession, and then they're just like going on to do it again for like funsies, and it's just like showing them, and they're all laughing, having a good time. You're like, nothing can go wrong.
Even Daniel, who is has that first possession, and it goes really weird for him, ends up back with the group and doing more and playing around. That was, by the way, when he falls off the chair. So we've seen one possession so far, and the first possession is Mia, and hers is very weird and creepy. And Daniel does it, and it's creepy in a very different way, and it's very sexual, to the point where he falls over. They're tied to the chair too. That's the other thing, right? They have to be tied down. So he's tied to that chair, falls over, and it's like humping the ground. And all of this when the dog comes up to him. And we've already had so many jokes about that dog already. And it comes up to him, and he's just full on tongue kissing that dog. And apparently the way they did that was using a puppet of the dog and him, and then compositing in the dog to the shot. So he wasn't actually tongue kissing the dog.
I hoped so. I assumed that's what they would have used the budget for, just to make that a little bit even more realistic. That scene specifically.
And so, but that one was just so different. And then for him to come from that to being back with the group, because he gets up and just leaves the room, and then coming back, it's like that tells you kind of the pull of not only the feeling of doing that, but then just the peer pressure and the camaraderie of like everybody being involved in it, that he will come back and join in the group again. Because again, I'd have been like, I'm out.
Yeah, you did that in front of your girlfriend and your girlfriend's best friend, who you said you were attracted to before doing that to the dog. So it's like, there's so much. I actually didn't think I thought he was just gone. Like, I was like, there's no way he can come back from that.
Well, especially because we had the one line from Jade earlier about like him being ultra Christian and not doing anything. Because her mom's like, you know, no sex. And she's like, we haven't even kissed yet, type of thing. And so then for that to go just a full 180 was a lot. But then Riley wants to do that. And Jade is a good big sister in saying, no, you're not doing that. But then she just leaves. And she leaves the room. Does she go after Daniel?
I think part of it was, I think Daniel actually went after her.
Oh yeah.
I think part of it was because Riley was like, I hate you.
That's right. Yep.
And so it's like, you're trying to take care of this little snot, and he's like, well, I hate you, and blah 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 blah. And so you're like, and you're leaving him with your best friend, who you assume would be on your side.
You would think.
But Mia's not.
No. And he convinces Mia to let him try it, which just a terrible decision all around. But then it's even worse when he gets in there, starts doing it. It's, again, uncomfortable and in a very different way now. This one is like looking painful and all of that. And then the voice change and calling her me and pretending, I'm assuming, pretending to be her mom. I don't buy that the spirit that they were talking to was her mother.
Mhm.
Where do you feel? Where did you fall on that?
They do mention that like the one spirit like they can imitate and that
Mhm.
kind of stuff. I am kind of on the line where the first one might have been mom, but then the rest were fake.
Okay.
If that makes sense. Like they kind of opened the door and were like, "Oh, we got to weigh in." Kind of thing after being in her head already. I don't know, but I know all the ones after this one were definitely fake.
Mhm.
Um, just the scene, like, he's so like, all the other ones, she kinda is, like, giving directions and stuff like that. This first one, though, she's like, "I'm sorry," like, and knowing how the mom ended, if she actually had did it herself,
Mhm.
that would be a response I'd give. "I'm sorry. I didn't wanna leave you alone," like.
Yeah, I think also just with them having the connection to her because Mia's interaction went beyond the 90 seconds.
Yeah.
And so she was a little more tied to them. I feel like they may have just picked up on her missing her mom and using that. But either way, like that is how they kept things going longer with Riley because Mia just immediately latches onto that.
And Mia's so selfish!
So
So
selfish.
selfish!
She should
Oh,
know better.
man.
She doesn't. And that's when things get super uncomfortable. And this was a scene that in theaters I wasn't quite prepared for how far this scene went the first time I saw the movie. Because we'd gotten an idea, but it really goes from like a 2 to a 10 immediately. How did that one hit for you?
Oh my like, well, it just because, like, so far the movie was kinda tame, like, the worst thing was making out with the dog, you know? So I was like, "Okay, okay,"
Hmm.
whatever, and then he just goes, "Pachoo!" And you're just like, "What?" And his face comes up, and you see, like, almost like a concave and just
Hmm.
the blood dripping, and I was like, "Oh my god," and then it kept going. I feel
Yeah.
like that is like, "Oh, they changed positions? Well, he's gonna find a different way," and then when he went for the eyeball,
Uh-huh.
I was like, oh, I have, like, eyes, whew,
Mm.
whenever that happens in a movie, that's what gets me, the little jellies, I'm like, "Oh my god."
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
went so hard, so fast.
Yeah, this movie doesn't do a lot of gore, but when it does a lot with it. Like the amount of time is low, but the level of it is pretty damn high. And it's just so there's no music. It's just the sound of him hitting his head on that table and then trying to, it it's just
The
the
wet crunch sound
mhm.
as,
Yeah.
like, and just the fact that it's there's no hesitation.
No.
Like, at all, like, you just and, like, even when his sister comes back in to try to help and she puts her hand out and he just goes and, like, pretty much broke her hand, I was
Yep.
like,
Oh,
"Oh my gosh," and this is one of those moments where Mia shuts down. She,
yes.
like, tries to help him in the beginning, and then she just walks away.
Mhm. Yeah, she walks away and we do that same thing. The sound design in this whole movie was great because every time she shuts down, because everything is really from her perspective, all our sound drops and gets very muted and we're hearing conversations and hearing voices, but only barely because she can't fully take it all in yet.
Mhm.
Her everything's gone fuzzy for her. So I really liked that quite a bit. Um, I also loved like the voice modulations on the spirits was really creepy. And that was one of those
Mhm.
where it made me think that it wasn't her mom because the way like the voice would change a little bit when it would say certain
Mhm.
things, which I did. I captured some audio of this. I'll play in a little bit. But we get, and then again, Miranda Otto, Sue, is fantastic in the hospital because it's exactly how she would react. And she's angry and she's blaming Mia for it. And deservedly so in a lot of ways. Like
Yeah, everyone should be blaming Mia for it.
because her selfish reasoning for, and the spirits knowing that, right, using her
Yeah.
mom as the way to get what they want, manipulating everything, and her being selfish about it, put Riley in this position. And oof, man, he looked
And that's one
rough.
of the funny things too, is we never really understand what they want. It's
Yeah.
always like they like the body, or they'll like, and then we get it later on, like the glimpse of where Riley ends up going, and it's just we don't what do they
Hmm.
want? But it
Which,
doesn't matter. It just we just know we don't want it.
yeah, and in some ways, it's more disturbing to not know why, but to know what. Like, they
Mhm.
want Riley, and to an extent, probably Mia. For what? We sort of get an idea, but why? We don't know, and that to me is far more disturbing. So Mia starts seeing stuff on her own, though, and again, we get so there's a lot of water imagery in this, and audio. Like, a lot of times you'll hear that water sound of like bubbling, burbling water. Um, but also a lot of the stuff with her mom when she would see her is like through glass or through reflections,
Mhm.
um, which does also fit into her when Mia's talking to Riley. So after that first night, Riley's like freaked out and can't sleep, and ends up out in the living room with Mia, who's staying at their house. Um, and she tells him about a nightmare she's been having, recurring, where she sees herself looking in the mirror and she has no reflection. So it's really interesting that we learn about that, and then she only sees her mom at first through reflections or through glass of some kind.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah,
It's
so
very
her,
Bloody Mary-esque
mhm,
too.
yeah.
Like the evil spirit you see through the glass.
Also, the whole thing where she's in the hospital and sees her mom in the reflection and follows her and ends up in the bathroom
In the bathroom, there you go. That's where Bloody
always.
Mary always is.
And bathrooms always have mirrors, right?
Yeah.
And a public bathroom is going to have like a wall of mirrors.
It's one
Um,
big Bloody Mary.
Also, I didn't notice it until this time. I don't know if you caught that or not. When she leaves the bathroom, it's the men's room.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Yeah, as she's walking out, you see the sign on the door says male toilets.
There's
So,
a sign probably right there, because it's probably the male spirit that imitates.
right, yeah, that's one of those very subtle ones. Um, so yeah, it's a lot of this as Mia's trying to figure out what's going on. She's spiraling more and more. Uh, what did you think of? So when she's leaving the hospital and she has Daniel taking her home, um, and he can't go home, right? Because he's
Mhm.
18, so the cops didn't call his parents, but his parents think he's staying at a cousin's house or something. I guess he was going to stay at Jade's initially. I don't know. They don't tell us, but it doesn't really matter. But Mia invites him to stay at her place, her house for the night.
Yeah.
Again, always a great idea, right? That scene got really uncomfortable, and not were you prepared at all for what happened there?
I feel like after the dog scene, I was kinda prepared for anything. That really opened the doors. With the scene, I mean, it was like the same, like, bloated woman that kind of hung on to her for over the 90 seconds,
Hmm.
being all weird and gross with Daniel, and then just the nightmare of, like, not being able to wake up or wake the person like, next to you up. And then it turning her being possessed, just all of that, I was like, "This is very symbolic to the fact that this whole thing is inappropriate, and he shouldn't be in your bed. He's your best friend's boyfriend."
Hmm.
Like, you sucking his toes was just an addition to the wrong things you're doing here, Mia.
And there was that moment I did really like, because they're sleeping head to foot, on the bed, and he's fallen asleep, and Mia is in the process of falling asleep. She's trying to deal with just everything that's been going on, and sort of to kind of continue on the thought we had earlier, where it's like she's inserting herself into a lot of lives and she's looking for these connections that she's lost. Just that resting her arm against his leg, like needing that sort of anchor point, that physical connection to something, to someone, and somebody that she has at least had some feelings for in the past, I thought was really a cool moment. And that's when she falls asleep, and then it goes right into this weird dream. And I don't know if you've ever had a dream where you wake up in the dream and you're
Mm-hmm.
still dreaming, but
Yes.
there's very little that's more unsettling than that to me. I do
Yeah.
not like that feeling because it's happened to me quite a few times. So when it happens in a movie, I always can really empathize with it.
I get bad nightmares, which
Okay.
is so funny because I love horror movies. I don't know. My nightmares are never correlated to the horror movies.
Mhm.
They're like just nightmares. And I get into the point where sometimes I'm like in my bed sleeping, but I'm having the nightmare where I'm in my bed sleeping.
Mm.
And I'm like, someone's in the house. What do I do? And like, and and it's not real. And so there's a lot of times like I'll like try to thrash like, and
Mhm.
my husband will have to wake me up because 'cause I'm, like, trying to wake him up because he's beside me in my dream,
Oh,
and
okay.
I'm like, "Wake up." So I was, like, very relatable to this. It would be extra funny if during that it was me sucking his toes. That's never happened, but yeah, but, like, it's terrifying.
And by the way, we're underselling sucking his toes because she had like half his foot in her mouth. Like
Oh,
it
she was
was,
committed.
she was going for it. That whole scene though, when she wakes up within the dream and is staring into the corner. Um, did you see Hereditary?
I have, yes.
Okay, it gave me a little bit of that feeling, right? Of like that scene where he's in bed and something's in the room and you don't know what it is at first. It gave me
Mhm.
similar feel to that, but it's again, it's one of those things where it's a show don't tell, and you both know exactly what's coming and have no idea what to expect at the same time because she's
Yeah.
just looking in a corner and you're like, okay, there's something over there. Something's coming from that corner. I don't know what it is. I don't want to know what it is. I don't want to see it, but I'm going to. They're going to show me at some point. Please don't. And then they do.
To be fair, when she crawled on Daniel, I still didn't know what to expect because that was not what I was expecting. Like, it kept
It's true.
going.
Yeah.
But speaking of Hereditary, this movie does, like, kind of remind me and fuse, like, the kid being forced to go to the party
Hmm.
and then the bad thing happening to the kid because
Yeah.
of it, like, it's like, little hints like that kinda made me think of Hereditary as
Yeah.
well.
There's definitely some influence there. And, if you're going to get influenced, Ari Aster's not a bad influence at
Fair,
all.
fair.
Yeah, that scene was just super uncomfortable. And like again, she's trying to figure out what's going on. Riley's not getting better. We get a little bit of a background when we come back to the kid Cole that we saw at the beginning of the movie, which we didn't even talk about the opening to this movie. What did you think?
No.
What did you think of that? How was that as a kick the movie off, starting off for you that first time watch?
I thought it like, I mean, it's a good way to start a horror movie right off the bat because again, it just gives more questions than answers because you don't know what happened. You don't know the people in this party.
Hmm.
Like, when the one guy that walking in trying to find his brother and he passes what looks like someone's mom cutting vegetables, saying your brother's in so and so's
Yeah.
room, and I'm like, this party's bumping, and this woman's just cutting vegetables there. Like, cool for her. And then he's like, and then he goes in, and then he breaks down a door, and so like this right away this hinted like drugs, like
Hmm.
this very much, and he pulls him out and then the guy's just mumbling and then just the stab right off the bat left you not knowing if that kid made it as
Hmm.
well, and then when he gets himself and all the teenagers there with their cell phones out, like realistic, I guess.
Yeah.
Like
I'm
it
also
was a shock.
yeah, I'm a sucker for a long take. Love a good long take tracking shot. When you
Mhm.
so I like starting off that way, but also it just gives you so much information right away, and then like opens you up to questions, and it's a shock. It just jumps right into it, punches you right in the face, and now it's like, all right, here we go. What are you doing to me, movie? And so then to come back to him later,
Mhm.
at an indeterminate amount of time later. We don't know how long after that happened that they got this hand, but it's long, and it's a short enough time that Cole still knows who Joss and Haley are. It's not like oh, you guys just kind of came along, took the hand and left. Yet it's long enough that like we don't know he's fully healed, it looks like. But I did like that scene quite a bit. Also, I love that shot of he gets on the bus, Mia decides to follow him, and then when she sits down and you see all of them behind him sitting in
Yeah.
different spots on the bus. I just like the way that was framed. That was cool looking. It was like a really
I loved that, but I was also like, how did they all get on the bus without paying?
That's those
Bus
Australian
driver didn't even
buses.
say that. Yeah, they're socialized buses. They're free.
Yeah. But they get like he tells them about how because they want to save Riley. They're trying to figure out how to save Riley. And he tells them, look, they'll lose their grip on you over time. He's like, yeah, it's not happening that way. It's getting worse. And this is when, and I love too, where this is where Jade gets really upset with her, and Haley and Joss show their true colors because they're just like immediately throw Mia under the bus. When Mia's like, we all agreed, and they're like, we didn't agree to nothing. Like it was all you, which it was. It absolutely was. But they were like, we are not backing you up at all. And at this point, I'd almost forgotten about them the first time I saw the movie. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, they were part of this. And they hand back over the hand that she took at one point, and then they're just done. Like they're just out of the movie now.
Yeah, they don't want to be involved anymore, you know? Now it's 2 people they know that got hurt.
And this is the point
Go to
in a
jail.
lesser, this is the point where in a lesser film, they would have over explained this area and given us like Cole would have known the whole history of the hand and where it came from. And like we would have gotten that trope. And I'm really glad they didn't do that here because we don't need any of that. And it would just been wasted time.
I agree. I mean, they can always do like a now that it's such a big movie, they can always do like a prologue movie of how he lost his hand and how it
Yeah.
ended up that way, you know? It opens the door more for them to then explain it with new horrors.
Yeah. I captured some audio of this movie as we get kind of closer to the climax to it because they figure out we need to shut the door. Like that was the thing, right? You have to blow the candle out. Lighting the candle opens the door, starts the ritual. Blowing the candle out shuts the door. And their thought was, we never blew out the candle with Riley. Why don't we try that? And it doesn't really work. But Mia tries one more time and meets the little girl, which kind of came out of nowhere. But also pretty effective because little girl spirits are always freaky. Little children spirits are always like that.
It's true. It's
And the whole
true.
like, I can take you to him. And that sequence where she goes to the purgatory or whatever it is, that's basically just a giant orgy, was originally longer. They were going to have it. It was like a couple of minutes long, and they cut it way down. And I think the movie is actually stronger for it. I don't think we needed to linger on that for too long. It would sort of, at some point, it would kind of desensitize you to the shock value of whatever the hell that is. If you stay
Your
there for too
imagination
long.
is always worse.
Absolutely.
Like what your imagination is always worse. So it's like showing just snippets and letting your brain fill in the blanks makes it so much scarier than if they like show you exactly what's going on.
It's very similar to what they did in Event Horizon, where they shot a ton of stuff and then ended up cutting it way, way, way down to just to secure an R rating on Event Horizon. And in doing that, I think that it benefited from it because it made it creepier and it let you fill in a lot of blanks. So yeah, I thought that was what was really good here. And that's when Mia sort of has the idea or gets told. Now she goes home and then she's told by her mom, I say in air quotes, that Riley, she needs to save him. And the only way to save him is to kill him. Because, oh, no, this is where we get the scene with her and her dad. That's right. This was a great scene.
Yes.
Like, really effective scene. because he decides finally to tell her about the note that he found that he hasn't told her about for 2 years because he didn't want to put that burden on her. It's like, well, okay, I get that for maybe a little bit, but 2 years is too long. Even at
Yeah.
her, she needs to know this information. This is the communication part of things.
Confide in a therapist.
Yes.
Like, talk to a professional if you don't know how to handle a situation, you know?
Yeah. And what I liked about this is like he's genuinely coming to her with this, and her response makes sense to me. Mia's
Mhm.
response to that is like, at this point, even if the events of this movie hadn't taken place the way that they did, I don't know how receptive she would be to that letter. But given everything that's gone on, and now her seeing her mom and talking with her, she just rejects it out of hand. And the spirits
Mhm.
use that. And the way this whole scene unfolds, I just really loved, where like they have a moment, but then she hears her mom tell her it's all a lie. I didn't do this. He did it to me, type of thing. And then she's got to leave and go to her room and like collect herself. And now you got the spirit talking to her in there. And again, it's super creepy. And I love keeping like the mom out of focus
Mhm.
a lot, and in shadow a lot, so you never fully see her. And then the sound of like the dad banging on the door, that's what she's hearing, but he's sitting
Yeah.
out there, not hearing that. This was
Being
another,
upset that his daughter left,
yeah,
like, while he's trying to connect, yeah.
this was another one for me, where it's like I know how this is going to end. You
Yeah.
can see it coming, and yet it works because you're still not quite ready for exactly how it's going to play out, in a way.
Yeah.
Um,
Y Yeah, and it's kind of like it's one of those things, so, like, the fake mom's kind of alluring to the fact that, like, almost kinda like the dad might have killed her is
mhm,
kind of how I felt, you
yeah,
know? And because the dad has been so distant and so ominous, like, if you're believing your mom here, this letter easily could be fake, like,
yep,
it's not, and the dad's hasn't been close to me in these 2 years, so it was very, like, and then once you hear the dad knocking and the mom's like, "That's not your dad," and, like, helping her out,
yep.
kind of, like, gained more trust with her, so I don't blame her for believing it was her mother.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, the second, like, he's trying to break the door down, and we see her look over and see the pair of scissors, and I was like, "Oh, yeah. I know exactly how I've seen this scene before, and yikes." And it's a really good effect. Like, the effects on that are good, and they're brutal. It's real brutal, and and then for her to be like, "Okay, well, now I have to do this for Riley. I have to do the mercy to Riley." Is what
Yeah.
she's being told by her mom. So she
Mhm.
leaves and does the old call and tell her friend to come get her at her house, but she's sitting in the hospital parking lot
Yeah.
waiting. And the way that whole scene plays out. And then when she goes in with the intent of stabbing Riley, that's her reason for going, and then runs into Sue one last time, who's now, it's days later or a day later. She's calmed down some. She's not as rash emotionally, uh, and tells her. And this was one of the things I caught, because Sue had a lot of great lines, but the way she told uh, Mia,
You're not Riley's friend, Mia. You're his family.
"You're not his friend, you're his family," and this is coming off the heels of uh, Jade telling her, "I hate the fact that you forced yourself into our family."
Mhm.
And I feel like at that moment is when Mia realized she can't do it to Riley, but she's still going to try at this stage. But I feel like that was the sort of turning point for her, because Sophie Wilde's reaction in that moment is great. It's just this like,
Yeah.
"Oh man, I am his family, and I need to do this for him, but I don't know if I can," type of thing. It was really good.
Yeah, yeah, my favorite thing was when, Jade goes and finds Mia's dad on the floor.
Hmm.
and he's still alive, and Mia just, once again didn't call anyone.
Nope. Nope, she didn't.
She didn't call anyone. I was like, "Oh, wow. Wow, Mia, come on."
So, okay, the ending to this movie, the climax to this movie, where as it's unfolding, so Jade finds that, right? She finds Max, her dad, Mia's dad, there bleeding, calls her mom at the hospital. Her mom's like, "Yeah, no, Mia's here." She's like, "She's dangerous. Get her out of the room." And they go, and Riley's missing, and Mia's missing. And how did you think this was going to unfold as you're watching it?
Um, to be honest, I didn't really know other than that, like, that she took Riley. I didn't know where she was planning on going until we see her on the side of the highway. Like, I didn't know what the plan was from
Mhm.
that point. She was like, "I can't stab him, so I'll do something else," but I had no idea where that was gonna go until, like, we saw her. So, yeah, I had no idea.
Because yeah, they come back around to the whole like the thing with the kangaroo at the beginning and the mercy,
Mhm.
and she can't do it. She couldn't do it then. She can't do it now. But she takes him out, and we get the mom spirit again, really trying and really telling her like this is the thing. Even going so far as to, and this was another one I got when she's standing at the side of the highway, cars are running by, and we get the creepy shot of the hands coming onto her shoulders. Um,
Yeah.
and then you hear the mom say,
I'm so proud of you.
"I'm so proud of you." Like, just they're laying it on super thick. And up until that moment, you can believe that she is ready to dump this kid into the highway
Mhm.
to help him. And then, but then when mom says,
We'll have him forever.
and that's when she figured it out. She finally realized that's not her mom.
Better late than never.
Yeah, better late than never for sure. And so she does the self-sacrifice thing. And this was a combination of low budget movie, but also I just like the filmmaking of the way they did the collision,
Mhm.
doing it fully inside of the car. And you see movement, you see something hit the car, but you're not entirely sure what it was. So it could have been him, could have been her. You can play that a little bit ambiguous until the reveal in that overhead shot where she's laying there like the kangaroo was on the street. And then
Yeah.
I love this, the way this ends.
I love the classic person dies, doesn't realize they died, comes
Yep.
back up, and is like, "What's going on, guys?" I love that, like, whenever they do that,
Oh
and
yeah.
just yeah, like, having her basically live her nightmare.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, even to the literal extent of looking in a mirror and not seeing her own reflection, but the way it goes, it takes its time to get there, right? She gets up at first, and like but you could also very easily, if they did play it off, you're like, all right, it'd be dumb, but I give it to you. But they didn't. They keep it going, and they're slowly revealing more, and then like lights are turning off, and people aren't reacting to her, and she sees her dad. Is that actually her dad, or is it a ghost of her dad? We don't really know. Is the assumption is that dad must have survived, but
Yeah, the Jade called for him and everything, so she found him alive and got him help, and,
Mhm.
like, you get to see how that Riley ended up okay from what she's seeing and stuff. I actually enjoyed, like, her dad walking away and her finally reaching out to her father.
Yeah,
It's like that's the first time she's reaching out to her dad all movie, and he can't hear her.
yep. And then he gets in an elevator, and the elevator's bright white light too. I like that. Like,
Mhm.
great symbolism there. Lights are going out. It's getting like the sound is dropping out and getting more muffled and all that. And then she ends up in the dark, and we hear the match. And that's that first time watching it, I was like, oh, nice. Like, what a great way to end the movie where you hear the match and you know exactly what's happening. Again, you know where it's going, but it's
Full
the fun journey
circle.
of getting there.
Yeah.
And now she's a ghost being talked to somewhere else in the world.
Well, and it shows, like, actually, I didn't look this up. It was the hand also left-handed in that last one?
Yes.
Okay, so that means that they, like the hand still got around.
Somehow, yeah.
Or there's multiple hands, or something's going on here, but either way, the horror lives on.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
It's like she might have helped Riley, but there's still more out there, so.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't know. And what I love is it's this nice little story of just these people going on. Now, they're working on a sequel called Talk to Me with the number 2 because of
Classic.
course. What do you think about a sequel to this now that you've seen it?
I think a sequel could be cool as long as they get away from the teenage party trope. If it's like
Mhm.
a different reason, I mean, you could even be like young adults, so or something away on a trip, like older people, or just like some sort of change in that dynamic. It'd be interesting to see how different people would handle the same sort of horror that we know is still out there because that's how it ended. So
Yeah. I'm of two minds on it. I don't hate the idea out of hand of a sequel to this because I do think it's a really interesting story and there's a lot of world and directions you can go with it. The worry is always that they learn the wrong lessons from this. Now it is the same directors, so that helps, but like learning the wrong lessons from the film and going in the wrong direction. I think as long as they can keep that creative juice going and keep doing what they want to do with it, then I'm okay with that because they know the story they want to be able to tell.
yeah.
The worry is always like capitalizing. It's the Blair Witch idea, right? Blair Witch Project was so big that they wanted to make a sequel, but they didn't understand what made that first movie work. And they tried to force something else into it.
Oh, I
That's the
know.
thing you
I
worry
had the
about.
sequel on DVD, and like you had to wait, not even DVD, maybe it was VHS actually, because you had to rewind because there was little symbols that popped up during it, and you had to
Mhm.
rewind it backwards to write out the symbols for the Blair Witch secret. Okay, so I know Blair Witch too, and how terrible it was.
Yeah. But I'm curious. I'm curious to see their next movie, bring her back, and then I'm really curious to see if they what they do with a sequel to this that they're in development on right now. They haven't started filming yet, but I think they're working on writing it. So
That's cool because I mean, who knows? Maybe Riley appears in it or something.
could be. Yeah.
Older,
That would
more
be interesting.
mature.
I caught a few things of audio I got to play because they were too funny not
Yeah.
to. Most of it
Oh.
is Sue. Sue was Miranda Otto was just perfect. Like, for one, this line.
You. My daughter's vagina. Prohibited.
Oh my god, Mum.
Like again, that's bordering on sitcom mom, but like it's believable because her kids are 15 and 18 or 17 or
Yeah.
whatever. I also you mentioned this one earlier, but this was too good not to.
You are not drinking tonight. On God, I will punch you in the face.
It's so good because it's like I will brutally beat you if you drink alcohol and break my rules. But
Mhm.
she's just obviously not gonna do that, which is why it's funny.
Mhm.
I also just think that's kind of funny that she mentions punching him in the face, and then
Right.
we saw what happened to his face. So foreshadowing.
Yeah. But she feels pretty bad about that now.
Yeah.
I also loved
Third wheeling for the night, are you?
third wheeling for the night. It was
But see, there's
great.
so many comments like that about Mia, and it's just like she never, she's always just kind of there.
Yeah.
Just yeah.
Also, I actually really like how there's one conversation between Jade and Sue that all takes place through a mirror. Sue is getting ready or getting done with work and getting ready for bed or something like that, and Jade's talking to her, and we only see it through the mirror, which I thought was kind of cool. But during that, she is,
Huh? You going to bed?
You sneaking out?
like you're sneaking out. Not even a question, just you're sneaking out. And mentioning Daniel, and then I loved.
You know, even if it was, he's ultra Christian. He doesn't do anything ever.
He's still got a dig, Jade.
It's true. We later
She's-
find out.
She's not wrong. There was those. I did the mom ones. Those were pretty good. His buddy, Riley's friend, who's
Yeah.
basically in 2 scenes. He's the first one that wants to, of the 2 of them, that wants to use the hand, and they tell him no. But I just loved when we first get introduced to them, they're just sitting there waiting to get picked up, and he pulls out the cigarettes that he's got. And I liked this because it's very believable, where he's like, "No, I don't. I sell them to people. I don't even smoke them." And then he picks it up and lights it, like just holding it, and lights the end of it. It's like, yeah,
and then he doesn't even smoke it. He hands it to Riley
hands
to
it off.
try it first.
Yep, exactly. It's like, you have no idea how these things work. You've never been around somebody that's used one. But then when Riley doesn't want to smoke it,
I need a new best mate.
I need a new best mate. Like, he's just like, whatever. There was the one throwaway line of,
Wait, didn't Ducker say they could imitate people?
they can imitate people.
That's it. That's all you get.
That's all you get. And for this story, that's all we need. I'm very curious if they expand on that at all, and sort of what I want to know a little bit more about the whys and the hows, but I don't want to know too much more. I want it to stay kind of ambiguous, because it's just creepier that way.
I think it should always just be puzzle pieces in each different movie. You
Yes.
put all the movies together, you get all the lore, but in each separate movie, it should be just a little sprinkle.
Yep, I would like that. I also like Haley correcting Joss.
It's a medium, Joss, not a psychic.
It was the hand of a medium. There's a difference.
Yeah, one talks to the dead and one tells the future.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. This line.
I wish that you didn't force yourself into my family meal.
Oh, that's harsh. Like, I get it. I get where she's coming from, but that hits real hard on Mia right there. And again, it's performances out of all of them are so good. All of them, even Haley and Joss, who are terrible people, their performances are great. Like, they're believable. And I think that's the big thing, right? They're all believable as people, and not just, because a lot of times horror movies can fall into the trope of, or the problem of, characters become tropes and become caricatures. And these don't feel like that. They're bordering on it. Like, Haley is a little bit, but there's still a little bit of depth there.
It doesn't even feel like there's like a start and end. It feels like we're just in a snippet of their lives. So it's like they're not acting these scenes for a story and to build character. They're just this is just their life. We're just privy to it. So
yes, it feels like well-written characters that the actors understood who they were to be able to just portray them, as opposed to telling us who they are.
Yeah.
And I think that goes a long way into the believability of the movie. Because on the whole, in a horror movie, you're going to get a lot of teens to young adults that are just not, like, they're not great. You know, they're usually making really dumb decisions, or they're there as cannon fodder for the slasher that you want to see them die, that kind of thing. So it's nice to have these characters that feel like real people. Yes, some of them are terrible, like Haley and Joss. They're not good, but they're also, they just feel like a person that you would meet. Jade feels real. And so I just really, really appreciated that.
Yeah, no, it was awesome.
Yeah, this
really good
movie
acting.
This movie is just really well made. We mentioned the effects, but again, like, visuals on it, the gore effects are extremely well done and very unsettling. And the sound design, the music that was used, I guess Sia agreed to let them use the song for, like, incredibly cheap, because she's from Adelaide, which is where this movie took place and where the directors are from. And I liked keeping it very, Australian, right? And keeping things there, like, a lot of the slang they were using is Australian. And so you can figure it out and you can follow along, but, like, it's not, they didn't Americanize anything, or, like, force anything in there.
Well, and they end with Greek, I believe.
Yep.
So it's like, yeah, it's like they're still not going to America, like wherever this hand's going, it's everywhere else, which I appreciate, and I hope they keep that too. Like, I know they probably will have to do an American, but it's like at least make it cool Americans.
We'll
I
see.
don't know.
We'll see how it goes.
Multicultural.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Well, because there's so much out there that doesn't get explored, and I like seeing movies from different perspectives. Doesn't always have to be American. Like
I agree.
and sometimes you can do remakes of foreign films and Americanize them, and it can work, but not always. It just depends on the movie being done. And some
Yeah,
movies,
and who's doing it too?
yeah, and some movies just need to be in the culture that the story is told in, and this one is one of those. It's like a really good Japanese horror film. You can't just take that and make it American. You've got to, there's changes that have to be made because there's just so many differences culturally.
Yeah.
And I would like to see this stay. I kind of like the idea that they wanted to keep it very Australian feeling.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm really glad that you got to watch this because
Me too. It was good.
one,
It was good.
yeah. Oh, it's a great movie. Like this is one of the better movies I saw in 2023. Certainly of the horror movies that I saw that year. This was definitely it. A24 does a really good job of finding good horror to put out there. Like we're kind of in a golden age of these smaller studios, Blumhouse, A24, Neon, that are finding these projects and either producing them or finding them and distributing them.
Yeah.
And we're really lucky for that. I just saw The Monkey last week. That was a Neon production of Osgood
Was it
Perkins. I enjoyed it a lot. It's bonkers. It actually, some of it in a very different way reminds me of something like Talk to Me, where Talk to Me is this small story. It's focused on what it wants to be, and it doesn't try to explain too much and just tell a really cool story. The Monkey does the same thing in a very different way. But it also is very gory. But it's like cartoonishly.
I love gore. Like I read a lot of splatterpunk when it comes to like what I'm reading, so seeing it visually helps I don't know, put those images in my brain when I'm reading.
Yeah. And there's something to be said for gore that works. I'm not a big fan of like something like Hostel never appealed to me. Or The Human Centipede didn't really ever appeal to me. There's like a line that I can't quite cross there. But it's not just because of like the gore of it. It's the mean-spiritedness of the stories that's really tough. Something like The
Where
Monkey,
it's like torture.
Yeah. Whereas something like The Monkey, which is incredibly gory, but it's almost cartoonish in the way that it's presented. Or Hot Fuzz was another one of those that if you really think about it, Hot Fuzz is really gory. But it's so good in the way that it did it, that it can get away with it. Same thing. I mean, there's a lot of movies that can pull that off. It's one of the reasons I enjoy slasher movies, because those usually are a little tongue in cheek. And even if they're designed to take themselves seriously, there's still a little wink at the audience because it's like the ridiculous idea of it. So, but yeah, and this was just one of those, it's like this little movie that comes out of Australia and just really blew me away. So I'm really glad that you got to watch this and come on the show and talk with me. I've been wanting to get you on for a little while now.
We'll eventually get the rest of the Lushes. They just all have like lives and I'm always available.
So speaking of the Lushes, let people know about that show and where they can find it.
Okay, so I am one of 3 hosts for the our podcast called Opinionated Lushes. New episodes every Friday wherever you listen, with our unedited YouTube shenanigans on Saturdays. You can find us anywhere. Opinionatedlushes.com is our website. We have a virtual drinking game on there. We just drink and talk about society and politics. We're 3 moms of disabled children, so we need to drink, and we always say if you can't cry about it, laugh.
There you go.
Oh, and we are an award-winning podcast. We won the Canadian Podcast Award for Outstanding Adult Series.
Excellent. Opinionated Lushes. Check that out. And you're also part of another show that I'm a part of. On occasion.
Yeah.
Talk about that one
Yeah.
too.
Okay, so we do this show called Fanfliction,
Mhm.
where we are writing fanfic one screenplay at a time. We're currently working on like a Disney Plus style Star Wars series, and we just finished our table read for episode 2. But we have TV's Travis on there playing our main character Mal Chemek. Our Jedi guy. The fun part is I don't know Star Wars, so I'm just kind of like giving my input, but sometimes it's I'm like, oh, let's check this out. But I'm doing my best, but it's fun. I highly recommend listening to the table reads because we have all of us doing the full read, sound effects added, and it's just like a fun little audio experience.
It's a lot of fun. It's a cool idea for a show, having guests come in. You have, because there's how many are the main hosts? There's you. And
There's 3, sometimes 4. One
Okay.
is kind of a part-timey, yeah, and then 3 of us.
And then bringing in another guest and working on like a page or 2 of the script and building it as you go is a really cool idea, because you get some different voices and different ideas going while having it's like a rotating writer's room. It's kind of neat.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and then we have all the guests come on for the table read, and you each get a character, and
it's so much fun. So much fun. I've really, really enjoyed it. So yeah, that table read 2 is now out for Fanfliction podcast. So check that out. You hear me on there. You also hear Jessica on there.
yeah.
Thank you so much for being here this week. This has been a lot of fun.
No, thank you for making me watch this movie. I appreciate it. And yes, all the Canadian all the podcast hosts are Canadian. Sorry, that was asked
Good.
in the
Oh,
chat.
yes.
So I'm
No,
just confirming.
Absolutely. Now, if you enjoy this show, I do this every week. I'm live at twitch.tv/tvstravis or on YouTube at tvstravis on YouTube. I do the show Sunday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern time. So you can check it out live. It comes out as a podcast on Wednesdays in all the podcast feeds and on YouTube in a video format as well. If you enjoy it and you want to back the show, listening and downloading, always appreciated. Rating and reviewing can help. And if you're able to, I do have a Patreon at patreon.com/WYHS. That helps this show keep going. You get exclusive episodes of my first watch diaries where I watch something for the first time. Right now I'm watching Ahsoka on Disney Plus, which has been a lot of fun. And it also lets me do things like my live episodes. I will be live in Las Vegas in about 8 weeks or so. I'll be there doing a show, and I will be back at Dragon Con this year. And if you want to see me at other conventions, well, Patreon helps to make that possible. And let me know if you got conventions near you. There's the podcast Toronto. What was the thing you were just at?
Oh, PodCamp.
PodCamp.
Yes, if you are a multimedia creator of some sort, online creation, podcast, whether you're a host, producer, whatever, I'm just going to plug it here. PodCamp Toronto, we are international, baby. We had people from Paris there. It is a full weekend thing in February. So next February, you can go. It's free to go. Tickets you can pay to get a shirt, and you get access to the networking events, which have free drinks and pizza. And it's just like you conference, you get to network, meet lots of cool people. So
excellent. So if you got something like that you know of, you want me to think about, let me know. You can email the show podcast.wyhs@gmail.com. You can also go to voicecast.app/WYHS and leave a voice message for this show. And if you do that, I might even play it on a future episode. So if you've watched one of the movies and you have comments on it, or something maybe we missed talking about in an episode, let me know. I'm always curious to get that kind of feedback. I love hearing it. So voicecast.app/WYHS. Excellent. Well, next week I've got my friend Josh Monroe coming back, and we're going to talk about Network. He got a hold of me and he's like, dude, have you ever watched Network? And I haven't. I've never seen it. All I know about Network is I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. And that's what I know. So I'm going into this completely blind. But I've heard really good things. So we're going to watch that next week. He got the Criterion Collection DVD, and it made him want to talk about it. So that's what we're going to do. That's coming up next week on this show. And we've got some more fun stuff coming up as we lead up to the live episode in Vegas. And I have a really fun announcement for then as well, for something else that's going on. So be ready for that. Until then, just remember to enjoy your movies. Jessica, thank you for being here this week. And everybody else, let's be excellent to each other.
I'm serious. Apparently it was the hand of someone who could connect with the dead, right? So everyone around him thought, let's just cut his hand off. White people shit, man, I tell you.
He was terrible, but I also really liked him. So